Philippines here. Now today I want to do a little bit of a follow-up to last week's video commenting on a very silly row that had broken out involving Susie Green and Caroline Farrow, and I'll put a link to it. Now Amanda very kindly sent me a link to an interview with Farrow, which was held on a British morning news show hosted by, amongst others, Piers Morgan. And I will say for the record, so everyone knows, I think Piers Morgan is slimy. I think he's a virtue signaller. I think he's a spiv, and a thoroughly dislikable person. But I think in this instance he is actually right. None of this should ever have become part of a police investigation. I can be corrected, but my understanding is that the law that was used is in fact a law designed to prevent people sending threatening letters through the mail or through electronic mail to other people. And it is being gold-plated so that it can be used to prevent people from expressing themselves online in Twitter and things like that. That's totally wrong. It shouldn't happen. It needs to be stopped now. And personally, I think that if the UK government wasn't so busy making a complete dog's dinner of a simple thing called Brexit, then this would have been attended to and the law would have been amended. Sometime in the future, hopefully it will be. However, I want to discuss a little bit, because comments are disabled on that particular video, some of the lies, and they are lies, that Caroline Farrow came up with. So the first one that she came up with, the first whopper, was that she was not targeting Jackie Green, who is Susie Green's daughter. Yes, you were. She did indeed target her specifically by saying, in the first place, by misgendering her. Now, what you have to understand is that Jackie Green has lived as a girl for many years prior to her finally going to get her gender reconstruction surgery, genital or sex reassignment surgery, call it what you will. We will use the term GRS. Many years, right? She was a girl before she went for the surgery. Susie Green was not taking a boy and turning him into a girl. She was a girl. The daughter was a girl. Jackie Green was a girl. And Farrow is a liar. She has attempted to suggest and to present her case such that this was an ordinary boy who was being dragged off to Thailand to be butchered by his evil mother. That's complete nonsense. It's a total misrepresentation and it's a lie. This woman is a liar. That's Farrow. Now, a 16-year-old is not a child. A 16-year-old in the UK, certainly in my country, can get married, can leave school, get a job, start a home, is regarded as a legitimate adult in many ways. If you're old enough to get married, which is usually considered to be the biggest decision that any of us make in our lifetimes, then why would you not be able to decide what you actually are in terms of your sexuality and gender? Please explain this one to me. What's happening here is that the gender critics are trying to say that people who are mature enough, recognised as mature enough to do many things, are simply not mature enough to decide about themselves. Again, it's a complete lie. It's wrong. I remember when I still first got involved in researching this, you know, it's almost 20 years ago now. It was in the early 2000s. And at that time, it was absolutely normal, particularly in the USA, for psychologists and other quacks to give sex non-conforming children, or you might call them gender non-conforming, but to me that term's illogical. It is actually sex non-conforming. Particularly male to feminine ones, that's boys who were acting girly, massive doses of testosterone, you know, to man them up. Now that is evil. That is the worst thing you can possibly do to a male trans child, a male to feminine trans child. You basically destroy any chance that person has of living as what she really is, which is a girl. And you do it deliberately because you don't want her to challenge your ideas of how society should be, in which people do not follow their own sexuality and gender. They do what you want them to do. And that's what this is about. Sorry, it's a bit warm in here. I may have to put the fan on. I use the fan because the aircon here, it's quite noisy and it's right in front of where I sit. So I hope that's not too disturbing. But honestly, our temperatures here now, it's high summer and we're talking about 37, 38 every day. I'm just a poor wee Scottish guy and I find it pretty bloody hot. I need the fan. Okay, so anyway, to get back to this point here, I remember 10 years ago, more 15, 20 years ago, and really up to about 10 years ago, these stories coming through regularly about how young trans young people had been abused by so-called experts who were doing their absolute damnedest to use every possible method they could to prevent them from being trans. Now, I was accused the other day on some YouTube comments thing of trying to, I quote, trans away the gay. Well, look, I tell you what, I'm gay friendly. This place is just full of gays. I don't have a problem with gays. If you people want to make it about, am I for the gays or am I for the trans, right? I'm for everybody. But if you want to make it a two-sided argument like that, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm sticking with the trans. I will fight for the trans because they're the most abused group in society. They are routinely abused, and they have been abused for many, many years. Going back to 10 years ago, at that time, not only were people, licensed professionals, administering massive doses of testosterone to young trans boys to try and make them into men, you had quacks like Ken Zucker. Now, Ken Zucker has all his PhDs and the rest of it, but the fact is, he ran a clinic that the specific purpose of which was to gaslight young trans children into thinking that they were gay. That's all his clinic was there for. And what basically would happen is if they got to 13 and they still insisted, after years of onslaught from a trained professional mindbender, years of this onslaught, that they still said, no, I'm not having any of your nonsense, Dr. Ken, I'm actually a girl, then he would give up and say, aye, okay, fine, we'll give them the drugs they need. It's a parody. It's an absolutely shocking situation. Now, I don't think that the way that he was got rid of was right and proper. I thought there should have been a real proper public investigation of what he did, which amounts, in my view, to child abuse, and that should have come before a court, instead of which the clinic was simply closed down. It was at the CAMH. It was simply closed down and he was out of a job. Well, at least he's not doing too much more harm now, but he should be made to at least answer to those people whose lives he affected in the way that he did. We had the same thing from Mike Bailey. Now, Mike Bailey is a person whom I like. I've exchanged messages and talked to Mike Bailey, and I think he's a decent man, but yet even he, in his book, The Man Who Would Be Queen, he regards his ability to gaslight a young trans boy into thinking he was gay as a success. Why is it more successful to be a gay boy than to be a successful woman? Why is that assumption made? What is it about being a gay boy that is in some way a better outcome than being a woman and living as a woman in society, getting married and having a normal life? How is it better to be gay? There's no answer to that. That answer has never been given. It's just an assumption made by certain people who have been persuaded by activists, gay activists. And remember that gay activists in the West are not representative of gay life anywhere else other than the West. Everywhere else it's completely different. They have believed that the people have been persuaded in the West that the opinions and views of a tiny minority of people actually should apply to everyone. Well, I think I need to see more evidence. And then again, we see this attitude continuing. James Cantor, very recently, in fact 2 years ago I think now, wrote a paper in which he claimed that in fact most trans children turn out to be, and I quote, regular gay folks. How nice, how down-homey, how patronising, how bloody wrong. Why is it more appropriate to be a regular gay folk, whatever that means, than a trans woman? What is that all about? Where does that come from? There's no evidence for this. It's just an assumption being made by these people who want to ensure that a particular view of society is acceptable or accepted. And they have to stop. There is no advantage. It is not better to be gay than to be trans. If you are a young boy who is feminine and who likes men, the best thing you can do is transition. It's that simple. Living your life struggling to live as a man under these circumstances will be intolerable. You will have lifelong gender dysphoria. And that is why so many gay activists are so bitter and angry and strident personalities. They're living with massive levels of gender dysphoria. Now, I know a lot of trans women, you know, and HSTS trans women are the sweetest, most delightful people on the planet, you know, They're completely well adjusted and totally well balanced. Why? Because they are what they are. They are being what they actually are. They're being women. They're not pretending to be men and getting themselves all messed up in the head. Just to return to the Zucker quickly, because trans, particularly male to feminine, trans people are so agreeable, and they're massively so. They really do want to make everybody happy all the time. They're easy targets for mind benders and shrinks. You know, because they always want to please and in fact, remember that someone who's young, male trans child, attracted to men, confronted by an authority male figure like Zucker, will probably have a huge crush on him, you know, which Zucker obviously doesn't let anybody discuss, a massive crush on him, and is going to do exactly what Zucker says because of that crush. Children of that age cannot decide for themselves what's right for them, but they can understand their feelings. And by the way, I'm completely against so-called transing children. I'm for leaving alone, right? But gaslighting children in order to think that they're gay when in fact they might be trans, that's not leaving them alone. That's interference. What I'm talking about is just saying you can be whatever you want. We will support you whatever you are. And when they get a little bit older, maybe about 10 or 12, then explaining what the consequences of decisions are. By the age of 13 or 14, a decision can be taken as to whether to go onto puberty blockers, 16 onto estrogen, 18 if necessary, and most HSTS trans women don't require sex change surgery or genital reconstruction surgery. They're just quite happy to live as women. That's a reasonable timescale. But let's be quite clear, people like Zucker were interfering long before that. They were interfering with children who were 6, 7 or 8 and gaslighting them against following their natural inclination, which was to be trans. Now that's wrong. That is wrong. And the trouble is, that is what these people want to go back to. That is what the whole gender crit movement is about. They want to ban all trans therapies, all assistance for trans people until they're 18. And of course they say, well, you know, 18, you can vote when you're 18, you're an adult when you're 18. We know that even for HSTS, who are naturally more feminine than AGPs, but we know for HSTS, male to feminine, the earlier the hormone treatment starts, the more successful, the more likely of a good outcome it is. You can't wait until they're 18 to put them on puberty blockers because they've already masculinized too much. The whole point of these arguments, and Amitai, Dr. Amitai is an internet head shrinker, a man of very little wit, has actually said that he wants to see people unable to get to access any treatment until they're 23. He knows, because he's read the papers, that HSTS almost never transition after the age of 23, in the West anyway. He is deliberately setting out to prevent HSTS transition. He's thrown his hat in with the gender crit mob. He's thrown his hat in with the new gay man. Why is the new gay man so concerned? The new gay man is so concerned because if lots of young boys who are actually trans decide, yeah, I'm just going to be a woman, that will deprive the new gay man meat market of fresh supplies. The new gay man meat market is a pederastic abuse system in which older men prey on young boys, and they need those young boys. They cannot afford to have them turning into women. When Jim Furat said, called trans women crazy queens who will ruin the way we live our lives, that's what he actually meant. He meant that young people would not enter the gay lifestyle and instead would just live normally, happily in society as women. And they can't stand that. Trans women here, non-homosexual trans women here, transition very early, you know, in their teens. But if you read their narratives, you'll find that they always understood this change in their nature as happening after puberty, typically around about the ages of 14 to 16. This is when they actually start to feel, well, maybe, you know, I'm a girl, you know, and they start to like to dress up. They start to like to associate with women and not with men. Whereas if you talk to HSTS, they've known since they were 6, 5. They were having crushes on their teachers at the age of 4. They were telling their mothers when they were 4 or 5 years old that, you know, your son looks like a girl. And he's running around the streets and he's got a t-shirt on his head pretending it's hair. This is a 4-year-old child, a 4 or a 5-year-old child. This is totally different from the AGP model. Yes, there are youthful transitioning AGPs, but they're not the same. AGP only ever occurs after puberty. And remember, puberty starts at 9. So a lot of these people will say, oh yes, I was doing this, that and the other when I was 9 or 10. Yes, that's after puberty. You've just proved our case. HSTS nearly always shows evidence prior to puberty. That's even as young as 2, according to the DSM. And the fact is that if you have a child of that who's been showing HSTS transition or gender dysphoria from the age of 2, well, by the time they're 12 or 13, you know what's going to happen. You know where you are. You've probably tried everything. You've seen the priest, you've seen the shrinks, you've done everything you can, and you go, just live with it. Here in Southeast Asia, there is what's called Bakla or Beki culture, and people are supported, you know, in a way that they are able to actually find their path through and become whatever they're going to be. They're not coerced into a particular way of doing things, such as happens in the unbelievably restrictive and conformist US society. But I'm going to leave that for just now. The Susie Green row, the spat with Caroline Farrow, should never have gone to the police. I'm sorry, I just don't think it's a police issue. Having said that, Farrow has shown herself to be a liar, disingenuous, a thoroughly nasty piece of work who means harm to people whose lives her model cannot accommodate. And she's doing exactly what the quacks who were injecting young boys with massive doses of testosterone were doing. She's going, whatever else happens, I will destroy you because I don't approve of what you might be. Now that's wrong. Farrow calls herself a Catholic. And I'll tell you, I'm not a Catholic, but I do occasionally go to Mass because Sam's a Catholic. And I noted yesterday that one of the things that they say at the end of the prayers is that the only judge is Jesus, who will return to earth and judge the living and the dead. And I would say to Caroline Farrow, it's high time you remembered that, because you are acting as a judge of other people, and that's not allowed. If you want to do that, please stop calling yourself a Christian of any kind, let alone a Catholic. That's all for today. And yeah, by the way, I did agree with Piers Morgan. I agreed with him about something else the other day. I think there might be something happening to me. I don't know. It's very strange. Please visit my websites. If the situation regarding HSTS, homosexual transsexualism, or trans kids interests you at all, then please go and visit allabouthsts.com. I'll put a link up. You'll find there are many articles that describe in detail what HSTS actually is and how to recognise it, and what the best way forward is with HSTS. HSTS, to let you understand, homosexual transsexualism is the extreme end of an etiology, caused, as far as we know, by anomalies in testosterone delivery in the womb. It ranges from people who are so feminized they can't live as men, it's just impossible for them, right through to people who are just vaguely feminized males. And it is a scale, it's a scale of variation, something which, by the way, some of the internet quacks don't actually understand. They're not very good biologists. HSTS is the extreme end. So you will see overlaps, you'll see things that happen that make you think, gosh, maybe that person is, but each individual is unique and a specific case. And it's very much a question of understanding the nature of their condition and also the circumstances in which they live, to see how best to deal with each individual case. Each one is different. You can't actually say there is a blanket one size fits all. And of course, again I'll say, there is a vast difference between non-homosexual transitioners and homosexual transsexualism. These are just not the same. And that's instantly obvious anytime you meet a bunch of people and they're mixed. You see both types in the one group and you go, how could you possibly confuse these two? But the conflation of these two, the pretense that HSTS doesn't exist, is something that is ongoing, particularly in the West, and it's vicious. It's really nasty. This is an attempt to completely erase an entire class of people, to completely erase them, to pretend they don't exist. And we can't have that. We can't tolerate that. So again, visit my sites, rodafleming.com, go to allaboutHSTS.com, buy my books, read my books, try to help, because I'm doing my best to try and get this message out. I know I get throttled because YouTube and the AGP lobby, they really hate what I have to say. I support HSTS, right? If you're HSTS, I support you. I also support AGPs, but I'm not crazy enough to think that persuading you that your delusion is a reality is going to help you. Fine if you want to transition, but an AGP is never a real woman, can't ever be a real woman. And these are things that we have to challenge and to deal with, really for the benefit of HSTS, because they need our help. I'm signing off now. I'll see you later. I've got to go shopping.